In Afghanistan today, another so-called insider attack. Officials say an Afghan soldier opened fire on some American troops in the eastern city of Jalalabad. One U.S. soldier was killed, several others wounded. I'm Ty Hernandez in New York. The Afghan soldier was also killed during that shootout. Let's bring in ABC's Louis Martinez at the Pentagon. Good afternoon, Louis, and what can you tell us about what the Pentagon is saying?
Ty, Pentagon officials are telling us that they believe that this was an insider attack, given the situation that involved that this was an Afghan soldier who did in fact fire upon a group of American service members who had been providing security for a meeting, a key meeting between a senior State Department official who had been visiting the provincial governor in Jalalabad in eastern Afghanistan. This was a high-level meeting. We're told that about an hour after this meeting took place, the U.S. security team moved away in a convoy when they were set upon by this Afghan soldier who was sitting in the back of a pickup truck. He said at close range he fired at the American service members. That left one service member dead and potentially as many as 7 U.S. service members injured. The Afghan soldier who fired at the Americans was shot dead. There may have been others who were wounded on the Afghan side, but it appears now that it was only one shooter. And right now there's a deep investigation underway to determine the facts about whether this was truly one of the insider attacks that caused so much concern over the last couple of years for the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan.
Yeah, one can imagine the types of alarm bells this rings off. This is not even the first so-called insider attack this year.
No, this is the second attack against U.S. personnel. Now, it's the first one involving U.S. military personnel in Afghanistan this year. And what's also significant is this is the first U.S. military fatality in all of 2015. Let's remember that there are 10,800 U.S. military personnel in Afghanistan right now. They're serving there as military trainers. They're going to be there for the next 2 years. President Obama just deciding 2 weeks ago that he's going to maintain that presence for the rest of this year at that current level because he wants to provide additional training and support for the new Afghan military. But the combat mission had ended at the end of December and had transitioned into this training role. And because of that, because most of the training was taking place on military bases, the very few military members are actually out in the field. What's significant about this event is that this is a part of what the normal business of doing diplomacy, of conducting business inside Afghanistan, where American officials are meeting with local Afghan officials. You need American security, so that's why these service members were there, and that's when they became vulnerable. More details need to come out about exactly what happened here, but it looks like this may have been one of these insider attacks. A couple of years ago, there were as many as 20 a year that were taking place inside of Afghanistan. The military set up some new defensive measures, instituting something called the Guardian Angel, so that whenever U.S. and Afghan troops were together, that there was always going to be one service member providing security. He was always going to be providing what they call overwatch, ensuring that this was a safe situation. And if something did happen, some violence did break out, they were there to immediately shut it down.
So it's clear that these attacks can erode the trust between U.S. forces and Afghanistan. What other measures can be taken? Obviously, you mentioned some pretty stringent ones that were put in place in light of these previous attacks. What more can they do?
Well, they've already built the trust. They're trying to build the trust between the Afghan forces and the U.S. military forces. But let's talk about what's going on here. We're talking about having trained 350,000 Afghan security forces over the last couple of years. That is the current size of the Afghan military. There are always going to be vulnerabilities in there because even though people have been vetted, even though they've been screened to see if they have any affiliation or any tendencies in support of the Taliban, there is always the possibility that someone could sneak through who may have those tendencies and is going to act on them violently. But we should make a generalization like that because there are also, in the past, some of those incidents were triggered by conflicts in personal relationships. Because these were American forces working alongside Afghan forces in very tight quarters, and sometimes there were personality conflicts. And so actually some of these insider attacks that we talked about over the previous years were prompted by personal disagreements, as shocking as that may be. But they worked on that. They tried to improve on the cultural affinity between the U.S. troops and the Afghan troops. That seemed to have worked out very well. And then they instituted this Guardian Angel Overwatch, which has been the norm. But I think this is a situation that's pretty out of the ordinary because you have American troops working outside of the wire, as they say, providing security for this State Department official, and that's when this happened. But that is typically not what is happening for most American troops in Afghanistan. They are staying inside the wire, conducting training for Afghan troops on Afghan military bases.
All right, ABC's Louis Martinez, thank you so much for bringing us these details.
Thanks, Ty.
You can keep up with this story in real time by downloading the ABC News app and starring this story for exclusive updates on the go. I'm Ty Hernandez in New York.